Hello, this is Dr. Cole Woolley, and today I want to share with you some of the stories about Oman frankincense, how it all began, and what is the difference between Oman frankincense and the one from Somalia, Somalian frankincense. So let's get started, okay? Right now, this is a photo of me eventually at the Oman distillery and farm that we built. Let's begin the story in 2010 when I set out to go to Oman and to get Oman frankincense, sometimes called sacred frankincense because it's called Boswellia sacra, and get it in 4 months so that you could have it. So my first goal was actually to get to Oman, which took me about 2 days and 5 flights. And after arriving in Salalah, Oman, then my goal was to talk to Dr. Mahmoud Suhail, MD. He was the owner, he would be eventually the owner and operator of the farm, and he would be the one that I would work with. He was a medical doctor, he is a medical doctor, and he had a clinic at the time where he worked with patients. So his time was very vital, and every day I met with him. Next goal was to rent a facility and then to source oleogum resins, make sure it was verified that it was ethically harvested, and then to purchase and set up a distillery and purchase and set up the oleogum resins, and then distill 100 kilograms of frankincense essential oil. And complete all this in 4 months, and that way you could have Oman sacred frankincense. And then the final goal was for me to be able to create an Oman frankincense farm so that it could be a great experience for anybody who visited. And throughout this entire thing, I was to document the experience and the evidence of Oman frankincense. So let's get started. First, I met with Dr. Mahmoud Suhail. He is a pediatric MD. He's from Iraq originally, and he lives in Oman. And he's a great source of frankincense because he had researched frankincense for so many years prior to 2010. So after meeting with Dr. Suhail, I decided to go out and rent a facility. Well, this is the facility that I rented. It was a house in a neighborhood. Officially, I was supposed to rent a place in an industrial area. But since I was just beginning, I rented a house. This is what the house looked like. It was 2-story, and it had a roof so that I could get up on top of the roof and do things up there. Well, it was a nice house, and I called it the frankincense house, because in the front yard there was a frankincense tree. Well, to be honest, when I first got there, I had no idea what that tree was. Like, looks like a tree, so what? But I eventually found out that this was a Boswellia sacra, or sacred frankincense tree. And that was nice to be able to have in the front yard. So I called it the frankincense house because that's what I was doing there, but I also called it the frankincense house because there was a frankincense tree in the front yard. So I tried to keep a low profile, being not from that area and not speaking Arabic or the Shahri language, which is spoken by the natives. I just tried to lay low. But I worked with Dr. Suhail, and he made sure that we could get the frankincense at a reasonable price. I let him do all that negotiation. That kept it a lot cheaper also that way. Well, I went to the open market, sometimes with Dr. Suhail and other times without him. And in the open market, just about everybody sells these sacks right here of Oman frankincense. And there's different qualities and different grades. And sometimes there's women there that are selling these. Now notice in the background there's all these jars. These are made up mixtures for people to, kind of like different perfumes, but in a mixture they can put in a container like this and burn. So they burn this in their home, just like 95% of the frankincense that is harvested in Oman is burnt just like this as an incense. So in the open market, you see all sorts of types, but you see a lot of frankincense of different types. And these frankincense are bought for anywhere from, like, you can buy a fairly decent 1 kilo of frankincense for about $20 to $25. If you try to get the green pieces, you can buy a kilo for maybe $200, $250, $300. There's a really cheap version called Sabdi, and it's totally black. It's basically one mass. It looks like tar, but it's about $1 to $2 a kilo. It's very, very cheap. Most people don't use it, and so kids or people try to sell it. And anyway, when you go to the open market, there's all these shops, and some people are selling clothes, but half of the shops sell frankincense resin. So this is what the resin looks like in the open market. That's not what it looks like when it comes out of the tree. You see, it's kind of dry, and they've dried the frankincense so that it's not sticky. And this way, the pieces are very unique. Now notice there's a powdery coating almost on the outside. That's because some of the essential oil has dried off, and it gives it a dry character, so that when you touch it, there's a little bit of resin that comes off into your hand, but not too much. It doesn't stick to your hands. So each of these are like little pieces or teardrops. And that's how they've been sold for 5,000 years. When they shipped these by camel caravan to go to Egypt or Israel or Babylonia, they had to be put into some kind of sacks or woven baskets, and they had to not stick together, because when it gets hot, they sometimes stick together. So they've learned to dry these, and these dry frankincense pieces are now what we distill. So there's brown, there's golden, there's amber, and there's green color, and a little bit of yellow. But mostly the frankincense from Somalia is amber and yellow. In Oman, you get mostly browns and greens, dark browns, dark ambers, just like these. And some of the pieces are as big as your thumb, some are twice as big as your thumb, and some are very, very small. Well, this is Dr. Suhail. When one of the times when I took him to the open market, he stepped behind the counter and began to tell everybody, this is the real story about the frankincense oleogum resins. He's an expert on frankincense, and so he would just get behind there and tell customers what was going on. He was even instructing the shopkeeper. So it was a great experience. Now, when I first went out into the field to look for the frankincense tree, remember, I didn't know what it looked like. So I knew what the leaf shape looked like, but when I went out to the southwest of Salalah, and I was actually walked into a militarized zone, a zone where you're supposed to stay out of because they're doing military exercises. But I didn't know that. I don't know how to read Arabic or any of the signs. So I drove into an area and then walked up this small canyon, and this is the tree that I first found. And this was my very first frankincense tree. Well, it wasn't even taller than my waist. It's just like a bush. And I thought, is that what all of them are like? What's interesting about frankincense trees is they always have green leaves on them. Yes, leaves will die and fall off, but there's always something that's there and green. And they call it an evergreen because there's always leaves to it. The bark is flaky, and when the wind blows, the flaky bark flaps like this and makes noise. The wood of the tree is good for nothing. Nobody cuts it down and uses it for building. It's very pithy, so people leave it alone. It's no good for anything, except for the frankincense oleogum resin that comes from this tree. So there's trees that are like bushes. These trees grow right out of the rock. They love limestone. They need 3 months of humidity and rain, which happens from June to September every year with the monsoons. So frankincense loves dry weather. It also loves 3 months of cooler, humid weather that happens during June through September, and they call that the monsoon season, or harif. And the mountains around the frankincense where it grows, it rains every day or it mists every day, and so plants, grasses, and trees all grow, and normally it's a very dry desert area, but during these 3 months it's very green. Well, frankincense needs this moisture to survive through the hot season of the year, and the limestone that it grows in sucks up a lot of water, and during the 9 drier months, then the roots of the frankincense tree just suck up the water and minerals from the limestone. Well, the trees get bigger, of course, and in the valleys, that's where they grow the biggest. And this is what it looks like if you want to see a frankincense forest. That means there's trees all around, but your idea of forest might be a lot of plants. Well, there's not so many plants. There's these trees, there's a few grasses, and sometimes a few bushes, and you can see the goats in the background are eating the dry grass. Well, camels also love frankincense, and you can see here this she-camel is eating the frankincense leaves, and they eat the frankincense fruit or seeds. They love them, but they also, in the process of eating the leaves, will many times break the limbs, and so the trees are shaped like an umbrella because camels will break off the lower limbs and the tree will grow up like this. Usually it will grow in a canopy that's more oval, but when the camels are there, it grows like an umbrella. It's very interesting. Anyway, there's a lot of camels there. There's more camels there than there are people. Now, I loved exploring frankincense locations, and between distillations, sometimes I had to take a day off, I would drive throughout the area and explore where the native Oman sacred frankincense trees are, and also where they were. And I went with botanists, I went with geologists all over the Salalah area to help me understand the history of Oman frankincense trees and how they obtain the resin. So here's a man, for instance, a Shahara man, and he would use this metal wooden device that he has to cut or to scrape off the outer bark of mature frankincense trees. When I say mature, they usually have to be like 40 to 50 years old. and they have to have a girth that's about this big. So when that's available, then they would scrape the bark off a section about this big, and the oleo gum resin would come out just like this. They sometimes call them tears. They come off like tears or drops, and they'll even drop to the ground. Well, they pick up everything. They collect everything that's on the ground or on the tree, and what happens is the oleo gum resin just oozes out of the tree, and it's collected. You can see how the teardrops fall down. Well, 30 seconds after making this score or this wound in the tree, this oleo gum resin starts to come out, and they call it milk to begin with because it looks like milk. And it oozes out for about 2 weeks, and they actually scrape that off and get rid of it. They don't use that or sell it. And then every 2 weeks for 6 weeks, they collect the oleo gum resin. Well, here's 2 weeks after the same incision or cut was made, and now you can see there's oleo gum resin coming out. This is after they've gotten rid of the 2 weeks worth of the milk extraction. Now this is the first 2 weeks that the gum comes out, and they collect this, and they'll do this 3 times every 2 weeks. And usually one tree will produce about 1 kilogram or 2 pounds by weight of oleo gum resin. Now the frankincense tree, after this 8-week period, and that's usually done in March and April of each year because that's the hottest season. It gets up to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, sometimes up to 40. And after this 8-week period, then the tree is allowed to heal its wound. And you can see the oleo gum resin turns black and it forms a scab on the tree. Well, after 9 to 12 months, this is what it looks like. It's fresh and green. Even the peeling bark is not on it. That's how you can tell that it's freshly healed from the scoring process. Well, this is what it's like to have ethically harvested frankincense. They do this once a year, sometimes twice a year. When they do it twice a year, then they'll mainly do it on the other side of the tree. So they don't harvest too much. I have never seen a frankincense tree that was tapped that eventually died. It doesn't happen because the people preserve their trees like as if they were their own children. So the people in the mountains own the right to harvest the frankincense. Nobody in town owns this right. Only the people in the mountains that are the original landowners. They call themselves Shahara or Mahara, and they are the tribes originate as the 5th great grandsons of the prophet Noah. They moved over there and settled in this area of Oman and Yemen, and the ones that live in Oman can trace their tribal names back to the prophet Noah. Well, the next thing I did was we had a distiller. It was about this big in diameter that was shipped there. We use hydrodistillation, which means we add water in. It's kind of like boiling potatoes. You put the water in, then you put the frankincense in, and then you use a flame underneath to heat it up, and that's what causes the distillation to occur. Well, this is what it looks like. There's water in the bottom. You put the resin in there, the oleo gum resin. You heat it up with a flame. and then the vapors of water, which we eventually call hydrosol, and the vapors of the essential oil go through the system, and in this gooseneck they eventually go to a condenser, which is cooled down. It's jacketed with cold water, and hotter water comes out. That takes the energy away from the vapors and turns them into liquid. So here the hydrosol and oil are vapors, but down here they become liquid. Liquid essential oil and liquid hydrosol. And once they're collected in the separator, then the oil floats on top, the hydrosol is on the bottom. This is the very first batch that I distilled in Salalah, Oman. You can see the resin underneath, and I filled water to the top. I eventually added a lot more water, but for the photograph, I did it this way. Now, this is the very first drops of sacred frankincense, of Oman frankincense that I distilled. Notice how golden in color it is compared to the water. And it floats on top of the water. It helps us to separate those. Now, to finish this section, I wanted to tell you about a guy who made a cartoon of me about I love sesquiterpenes. Well, I'll talk about the chemistry in the next section, but I love sesquiterpenes, and when we distill sacred frankincense, Oman frankincense, then we distill it for 8 hours. Normally people distill it for 2 to 3 hours when most of the volume comes out, but we distill it for 8 hours in order to get sesquiterpenes out. I do love sesquiterpenes. Sesquiterpenes are the real powerful molecules of this Oman frankincense. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the course that I teach. It's an online course. It's 2 courses in one. It's called Everyday Essential Oils. It's online. I have 42 lessons. You can study it at your own pace. You can do it on your phone, your laptop, your tablet. The videos are 5 to 15 minutes long. They're easy to understand. You can watch them over and over until you've mastered it. And it's lifetime access. Even after you finish doing all 42 and graduate from my course, you can go back and review it. Now for the next 100 people, you get $25 off. The coupon code is 25 off. So now, for only $72, you get access to my course, which is found here at exploringeo.co/p/everydayeo bundle. So if you can get that. So what I recommend is that you at least go there and look at the testimonials of my students. Also read through the entire list of all the lessons. You can even watch a couple of lessons so you can see what it's like. But I highly recommend it. So this is me teaching the course, kind of like what I'm doing right now. And I talk about how to use essential oils, how to use them safely, how to use them for emotions, how to use them for your body, how to use them for your brain, how to look for the highest quality essential oils. So I do a little bit of chemistry. I try to not make it overbearing. So I think you will really enjoy it. These are some of the graduates I have from the course already. From many different countries. You'll notice the Philippines, Malaysia, USA, there's Australia, Poland, Italy, Hong Kong, more Malaysia, Netherlands, Czech Republic, Germany. These people, even though they don't speak English, have taken my course, understand it well enough to graduate with an 80 percentile or more on the final exam. There's a final exam with 40 questions. So everything is easy to do. There's quizzes. You can take the quizzes multiple times. There's a review printout that you can read over and make sure you understand the concepts. And you can take the final exam multiple times until you pass. I highly recommend it. So with that, I'll stop it and then we will create another video.